In a move that surprises no one, Anthony Albanese has broken yet another election promise, this time on the Stage 3 tax cuts. In the lead up to the last federal election, Anthony Albanese repeatedly promised to implement the Stage 3 tax cuts in full. He repeatedly promised this in order to get elected.
You've told voters throughout the campaign that you are a man of your word. You've made public commitment that you're going to deliver those Stage 3 tax cuts. I asked you this afternoon then, alongside those tax cuts, can you give an assurance to recipients of those that you won't increase the Medicare levy or an NDIS levy increase where you would be giving with one hand and taking with the other?
Yes, I can, Kieran. We've outlined very clearly what our plans are. People are entitled to have that certainty of the tax cuts that have been legislated. And of course, the Medicare levy and the NDIS levy are in place, and we won't be changing them. What we want going forward is that certainty. They've been legislated, we support them.
Can you promise to those Australian families the Stage 3 tax cuts will come into effect in July in full?
Well, we haven't changed our position on that, Michael.
I'll ask that question again. Can you promise, as you did before the election, the Stage 3 tax cuts will come in full in July?
Well, I've said we haven't changed our position.
But can you promise, Prime Minister?
Well, I've said I can't be clearer than that. We haven't changed our position.
That's not exactly a promise, PM. It was a promise before the election. Has that promise changed?
Yeah, you can play word games, Michael. Nothing has changed.
Anthony Albanese, however, has now walked away from that promise. He's reneged on his election promise. And this has broader policy problems and problems for his credibility. Because if Anthony Albanese keeps breaking election promises, and this is just one of many examples, then can you actually trust him? Can you trust him in other policy areas if he'll break his promise in this area for political expediency? Now, the Stage 3 tax cuts were actually an important reform. They were part of a broader tax package, and it is a shame that Anthony Albanese has walked away from them. As the name suggests, Stage 3 tax cuts were part of a broader package that included two prior stages. The Stage 1 tax cuts offered temporary offsets worth up to $1,080 to workers earning up to $90,000 per year. There is an argument for extending those tax offsets. The Stage 2 package introduced permanent gains for workers earning up to $66,000 by giving them a low-income tax offset worth as much as $700 per year. Now again, like I've indicated, there is a strong argument for extending the Stage 1 tax cuts and making them permanent. But that's not what Anthony Albanese did. Rather, he decided to renege on the broader tax cut package. The Stage 3 tax cuts would have changed several other parts of the tax code. They would have eliminated the 37% tax rate that would previously have applied to anyone earning incomes over $120,000. They would have lowered the 32.5% tax rate to 30%, which applies to anyone earning $45,000 to $120,000. They would have raised the threshold at the top marginal tax rate of 45% to $200,000 from $180,000. Now, of course, on top of these rates, people would have to pay the 2% Medicare surcharge, so the top marginal tax rate effectively is 47%. But in any case, the maximum benefit of the Stage 3 tax cuts would have been $9,000. This would have applied whether you were earning $200,000 or $2 million. These tax benefits would have applied to the people who did, and still would, pay the most tax. That is, they were offsetting a disbenefit. They were giving people more of their own money. They were stopping the government seizing more of that individual's own money. This wasn't largesse, rather, it was letting people keep more of their own hard work. Now, under Anthony Albanese's changes, which were strategically leaked to the media in a rather haphazard manner, they're going to have several major changes. People in lower incomes might be slightly better off. People on higher incomes certainly will be worse off than under the Stage 3 tax cuts. Notably, for the lower income earners, the marginal tax rate is going to go from 19% to 16%. Furthermore, the threshold at which the 37% tax rate applies go up from $120,000 to $135,000. In addition, the threshold at which the top marginal tax rate applies will go up from $180,000 to $190,000. It appears that this is going to shave off $5,000 or so of the benefit that would otherwise have accrued under Stage 3 tax cuts. The benefit to someone earning $200K will go down significantly, from around $9,000 to just over $4,000 it appears. This is a significant reduction in the tax cut. It more than halves the tax cut. It's a significant harm to those workers, and is an attack on ambition, and is an attack on success. Now, the rationale for the original Stage 3 tax cuts was several-fold. First, Australia's tax rates are extremely high compared to other competitive economies, such as the United States, Singapore, and Hong Kong. The maximum tax rate in the United States is 37%. That is the maximum of 37%, as compared to Australia, where the maximum is 45% plus the 2% Medicare surcharge. Furthermore, in the United States, that maximum tax rate only applies to people owning $600,000 or more. It's dramatically lower in Australia. That is, Australia taxes much higher than the United States, let alone locations like Hong Kong or Singapore. Second, and relatedly, Australia's income tax brackets are not indexed. They do not go up with inflation. That is, those thresholds have not been changed since the mid-2000s. That is a major problem because inflation is eating away at people's disposable income. This compares unfavorably with the United States, where the tax brackets are indexed. So to put this in perspective, suppose inflation is 5%. Suppose your wage increased 4%, so not even at the rate of inflation. You are already behind. However, you need to factor in that that wage increase is then hit by tax. So if you are on the top marginal tax rate, you would only keep around 2% of your wage increase, meaning you are 3% behind inflation. You are going behind, and hence why raising these tax brackets is vital. It stops people paying more and more money and losing more and more money to the government just due to inflation. Someone therefore might only attain a minor part of their income increase. This is a major problem when we're in a high inflation environment. Furthermore, it gives the government more and more money just to spend profligately. People would be better off spending their own money themselves rather than giving it to the government. Indeed, Australia's tax thresholds have not changed since 2008 to 2009. Therefore, if the thresholds had been indexed, the top marginal tax rate threshold would be around $270,000, not $180,000, $270,000. That is the impact of inflation. And this, therefore, is the impact of bracket creep. People are paying more and more tax because of inflation. The Stage 3 tax cuts would only give back a very small portion of the impact of inflation. And this same problem applies across all income levels. Indeed, all of these tax brackets should be indexed to inflation. Now, this, of course, is a major problem. First, it lowers productivity. Why spend another hour at work or work harder for your company when you only keep a small portion of your time? You only keep half of your time. Why would you do overtime at a company earning PAYG salary when you're only going to be rewarded for half of the time you spend? If you work an hour of overtime, you only get to keep 30 minutes of it. This discourages people from going above and beyond. This is basic economics. You pay people more and they will work harder. If people are only keeping half of their time when they're working, well, they might decide, I'd rather spend that hour on leisure than that hour on working because they're only going to reap 30 minutes of the benefit. Second, it creates brain drain. People will simply leave to Hong Kong, Singapore, or the United States in many cases. They are unlikely to leave for a small gain, but people who run large companies or who are earning large amounts of income will leave, especially if they are ambitious, or they will find other ways to be working overseas. This is, of course, a problem, because it undermines employment and undermines innovation, something the government pretends is a key priority. This has major on-flow effects, and the Australian government doesn't seem to appreciate that by having these high tax rates, you undermine ambition, you undermine hard work, and you exacerbate brain drain. Third, it is inherently unfair to seize more of a person's income simply because they have worked hard, been ambitious, or succeeded. Behind many high-income earners is a significant amount of hard work. They've sacrificed greatly. Labor is trying to play the politics of envy. Behind many successful people are large sacrifices. Maybe that person earns a high income, but they skipped their kids' sport games, or their music recitals, or a lot of key important events. They didn't go to birthday parties, they worked hard. They spent all of their time working to get ahead. Maybe they spent inordinate amounts of time studying or inordinate amounts of time working several jobs. Maybe that person works 3 jobs and as a result is on that higher income bracket. This is a major problem because that person has been ambitious. They've succeeded. They've worked hard to get ahead. And now Labour is attacking them. That is what they're doing. Labour is attacking ambition. Consider, for example, the innumerable hours the junior doctors put in working barely minimum wage. They're only able to recruit this much later in their career. They've sacrificed for years propping up the hospital system on very low wages when you look at what junior doctors are paid. They only recoup this much later on when they become successful. Similarly with lawyers, similarly with finance people, similarly in many of these areas, they put in years of hard work earning low salaries to be rewarded much later on. Behind these large incomes are years of extremely hard work and sacrifice and study. And Labour is attacking that. They are attacking this because they fail to recognise all of the hard work the person put in the background. Labour is just hoping that people will seize other people's money. They're hoping that it's very easy to vote to take someone else's income, to vote to take someone else's hard work. Because if it doesn't affect you, then of course you'll vote for it. That's what Labour is counting on. But people must understand that once they choose to do so, it normalises such practices. If you're at all ambitious for yourself, or for your children, or for your family, then voting for such policies is voting for a seizure of another person's assets. It's tantamount to throwing your kids, your children, your family under the bus if you have any hope or ambition for them. Labour is attacking ambition and attacking success and attacking hard work. Labour has also broken an election promise because it is seen as politically expedient. It is seen that no one cares about high-income earners or successful people. Therefore, they are an easy scapegoat. They're easy to attack. We saw this with the superannuation tax grab. Labour is going to spin this as helping low-income earners and just harming wealthy people. They're going to spin this as only harming the big end of town, the people who can afford it. That's how Labour is going to market this. They're going to market this as an attack on people that don't need the money. By contrast, in reality, this is an attack on ambition, success, and hard work. It's an attack on the people who have gone out of their way to succeed, generate innovation, generate income. The reality of this is Labour is playing the politics of envy. The irony of this is that if they encourage people to work more hours, to work harder, to create more innovation and create more success, we would actually grow the pie for everyone. That is, if that person goes out and succeeds and earns 300k instead of 200k, well, they'll implicitly be paying more dollars of tax, even if their percentages are lower. Labour should be encouraging people to go out and generate growth, not penalising people for doing so. Labour is moving to seize other people's money. They already did this with the superannuation tax grab, and this is a clear attack on ambition and success, and is a clear vote for mediocrity. Anthony Albanese is a charlatan. He's broken an election promise. He's not to be trusted. He's attacking success and hard work. And if he's breaking an election promise on this, well, think about what else he might break an election promise on. You can't trust Anthony Albanese. And even if you support changing the stage 3 tax cuts, you can't get over the fact that he repeatedly promised to implement them. And what else might he break a promise on? Maybe you're okay with him breaking a promise on this. But what about another thing that you want him to keep a promise on? Can you actually trust him to keep a promise on anything? Or will he just turn his back on it when it's politically expedient? Anthony Albanese is a clear clown and a charlatan and is not to be trusted. And we need to remove him at the next federal election.